Welcome to the ThinkSpace podcast with myself, John Staskowski, and Danny Massaro. Our goal with this podcast is a simple one. We discuss and dissect a prescient topic, issue, or theme that we think is interesting and might help us humans better understand why we think, feel, and do what we do. If you'd like to engage in these types of conversations too, you can check out thinkspace.academy for a unique cohort-based course that will help you think critically and live authentically. Hope you enjoy the episode. Right, so we're going to have a little chat about Mimetic Desire. So I'll give just a little overview for people listening, just so that they get a rough idea. And I'm going to start that with a little quote from a French social scientist called René Girard, who we're going to base a lot of this discussion around. And he said this was in his book, Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World, which came out in 1978. And he said, man is the creature who does not know what to desire, and he turns to others in order to make up his mind. And that was Girard essentially describing mimetic desire. And what that was for him was essentially a social process by which we kind of take our cue for what we then desire as a person from other people. Mm-hmm. So there was very much a distinction between desires and needs. So our needs, just as a human being, would be things like food, shelter, safety, etc. But desires, according to Girard, are very different. They're not kind of innate or like a natural thing that we need to just survive. They're very different, and we take our cue for those desires from other people. So we see other people and we kind of perceive what they think is good, and then we kind of take our cue from that for then, that's something that I want or something that I desire. So essentially, it comes from the word mimetic, which kind of originates from the Greek word to imitate. That's where mimetic or mimesis comes from. So it's very much around kind of mimicking and imitating other people. So we're going to have a chat about that.
The topic of desire and wants is something that I've used a lot, mainly in coaching and helping people and athletes, trying to get back to really a lot of the time what they want. So I would often I would say to them, okay, if they were struggling or things were going on, right, what is it you really want? And let's get back to that basic. And then I might say, why as well? Why do you want these wants? Well, what's the whole reason for that? And they get a list of the main top wants again. I want to do this and want to win. And they tend to be quite nice, liberal things, they always say, or goals, and then I'll say, well, why do you want them? And they struggle a little bit. And it takes quite a long time, that, because most people have found when you ask them what they really want, they know what they don't want more than they know what they want. And that goes back to the very first weekend that I used to learn a bit of the neuro-linguistic programming stuff, where it was, how do you set a well-formed outcome? And it was like the first weekend, the first thing. And I remember they used the sort of Spice Girls song at the time, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. There's a bit of a thing to get people firstly to say, come on, what are you after? And what this did was take it to the next level. It was like more of combining the why, and so why do you want that? And I'd never really thought of it as much in terms of this mimetic desire, that sometimes you want what other people want more than you want what you want yourself, because you're a sort of pack animal, a herd animal. You follow everybody else. Your Nietzschean type view of most people being the sheep type thing, following the herd. So it really interested me.
And it's probably fair, the guy that we've been reading, obviously René Girard was the main protagonist when it came to kind of coming up with this theory back in I think kind of from the late 50s onwards. He was working out in America. He was a French social scientist, moved to America, and I think he taught at Stanford for around 15 years. So he was the originator, but you and I have been reading a guy called Luke Burgis, Burgis, and his book, Wanting, and just a few of his articles and blogs that he's got, different podcasts he's been on. He does a really good job, I think, of synthesizing Girard's original work into kind of a more modern setting, doesn't he? So that's just for people's context. That's what we've been reading over the past couple of weeks and bouncing back between each other. And I think it's an interesting thing that jumped out to me initially, Danny.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're talking about working with players there.
Yeah.
Initially, both Girard and Burgess, they kind of distinguish between internal models and external models.
Yeah.
So internal models, so people that we model off of, they're the people that we tend to come into contact with directly. So friends, co-workers, people in your day-to-day life that you actually interact with.
Within your sort of social circle.
Exactly, yeah. So like it's almost tangible. We can touch them and meet up with them and speak to them directly. And then there was also external models, which is more your kind of celebrities, media personalities, historical figures. So they can influence us or they can influence our desires, but we're probably quite unlikely to actually ever meet them, perhaps, or speak to them directly. So it's almost like an external influence on us. And the interesting one that Burgess then distinguishes is there's like a grey area of kind of social media where there's people who would have been quite external models for our desires, but now we can almost interact with them to some extent. Burgess gives an example of, say, Michael Jordan when he was a kid growing up, was like a real role model for him and someone who he really wanted to mimic almost. But there was no way where he would ever meet Michael Jordan or get to speak to him. Whereas now it could be that you could actually maybe send Michael Jordan a message on, say, Instagram or Twitter or something, and maybe he could actually reply. So I found that quite. You've got these internal models, external models, but then that grey area of it's almost becoming blurred now, where the externals can become a little bit more in
Well, I
your
suppose
social circle.
your followers and your friends as well on social media, or in your Facebook or wherever, they are almost, you think of them as part of your social world now, like your peers, not so far out there like a Michael Elvis, Michael Jordan, Beyonce type influencer, David Beckham perhaps, so that you kind of know that they're going to be used for marketing, for advertising, but what all of a sudden what you have way more people in your own sort of internal social group that you identify with as very similar to you, and their wants are now influencing you more than ever. So it might have just been your neighbours getting a new car and you're thinking suddenly, damn, my car looks terrible all of a sudden. Same car, but it looks like a bad car because three of your neighbours have bought new cars. Suddenly you're going on Facebook and it's not just things like your old school neighbours would have done and your own friends. It's now this wider network of people you feel familiar with and relevant to. So they're going on this holiday, drinking drinks in Dubai. They're doing, buying this pizza oven that makes pizzas this way. The kids is, doing things, party, nights out, white teeth, Botox. Suddenly, it's just gone bang because they are setting the standard for you in a way. That's how I understood it, and it gets pretty ridiculous because if you keep getting tuned into that, not only are you being kind of led by this weird rivalry. It's not a rivalry as in always a nasty rivalry, because it's not like you're in a hierarchy game like sport where sometimes you want to win because you don't want your opponent to win, and you're just playing that natural, hierarchy game. With your friends, it's this hierarchy game that's constantly going on that you don't even know you're in. So you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, in a way, as they used to say, to the absolute max in all aspects. But these desires aren't your true deep desires. They are their wants, and therefore, once you get them, and it's a race, you never win. But once you get them, you're never truly happy because it wasn't your thing in the first place. There's like a low level hollowness, and that's going across. You see people, maybe remortgaging houses, therefore having to keep jobs that they wish they could leave, but they can't because they're stuck in this mimetic trap of, well, there's no way I can now be a headmaster of a school and have a house like that or drive a car like that. It just doesn't go with what I think I want, because there's all these things that go with, and my kids have to go to this school and I have to take them to, they have to have a coach. Now they have to have, a private yoga teacher. They have to have, And I as someone who's travelled the world with squash a lot, and my sport, and gone into pockets of environments, I've seen this come in more in communities where there's a lot of wealth, particularly over in the States. So they've almost been ahead, but now it seems to have trickled down to like most people
Yeah.
getting involved with this mimetic game.
Well, it's because they say a consequence of that. So those internal models. So when it's like you said, say on your road where you live, and everyone can see what each other drives, what they wear,
Yeah,
it's very tangible, isn't it? They kind of say that that an outcome of that is really, it's like a sameness. So everyone ends up ultimately kind of looking the same. So Burgess calls it Freshmanistan, as like
yeah,
this kind of imaginary place where if you're like a freshman at university, everyone goes and everyone ends up ultimately kind of looking the same. They pick up the same lingo, and it's very
yeah,
samey. There's not a lot of differentiation. Whereas the external models, you don't tend to have that. So you can have some real like outliers who you might identify with that are totally different to the people in your own street. One of the most ways we notice it is when we travel, isn't it? And you go somewhere and it's like you kind of pick up on the vibe straight away, don't you? Where it's like, oh, this is different. Like
yeah,
you could just tell people are on a different wavelength to you with
yeah.
regards to what they perhaps desire and want and how they're
Yeah,
behaving.
and I think in any culture, it's going on, isn't it? It's like this is what he's saying. It's the first quote he said, the hidden forces of almost all behaviour. So I mean, let's take a step back. I mean, how can you ever truly know where your desires come from? He's proposing this. It's mimetic. Everything's mimetic desire, and I think in these general genres of books, we'll all have seen the airport type books. The happiness hypothesis, and tends to take one philosophical point of some philosopher. It's really grounded, really good, makes sense, and all of a sudden it looks like you can apply it to every single thing in the world. So I think that there's a few overall. I'm not saying I don't agree that everything is based on only copying people. And when you do follow the lead of other people, it's not only that. Saying that, it does make a lot of sense, and when you get awake to it, I think it is a force that's always going on, that you see what people have, and you see how people are living, and you need some sort of guide of what perhaps joy is, what success looks like, what I'm supposed to be doing with my time. You join, say, a tour in sport, and all the top 10 do certain things, and they have certain, like for example, this thing now that everyone has to have a team around them, support. So you think, gosh, I better get a team. I've got to do it. I've got to look like that, and I need a sports scientist, and I need an analysis, and I need to have resilience, and I need to have a growth mindset, and I need to have. So it's because that's what everyone's talking about. Whereas what I like about this is if it gets you, if you can sort of admit and be truthful to what you desire in the first place. What I like about this, is that it gets you to think why you want what you want, but then throws in the thought and the possibility that it could be mimetic. Have you ever thought that all these wants you have, or that you've now established, are just mimetic? So using that template and that philosophy, you can at least rinse through those things and truly think, like, is it mimetic? There could be some natural desires. There could be some things that are just practical desires. I want a new squash racket or a new golf club because it practically does a better job than the old wooden one. So what I liked about it, it was like you could go, what percentage of my desire is mimetic?
Yeah, I like that as a because it is one of those things that I've found. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So
Yeah.
once you kind of recognise that, oh, this is actually quite it's a massive influence on
Yes.
who we are, what we do, how we behave, the people we knock around with, all that. Once you think, bloody hell, this is a massive influence. And once you've seen that, you can't almost go, I just I don't want to know this now. I'm going to
Well,
ignore it. You've
I think
kind of got to go with it.
the lady at the till yesterday, she went, "Do you want that food magazine? It's a free magazine from the store. This is all our recipes. And I looked through I got home, looked through the magazine. It's literally just mimetic desire. It's like, it's porn food. It's like the Marks and Spencer's adverts. you want this, you desire, when them Jamie Oliver did his shows and Nigella, Lawson or whatever she calls, they're not selling you the meal. It's all about what the meal means, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you cook like this, you have friends and evenings like this, and you are on the cutting edge. So you start to see it everywhere that, and it's that fine line between I've just had a delivery there, some fruit, vegetables. Why am I buying that organic? Do I want it because of the, it's a sort of, do I want it because of the actual practical benefits of eating organic food, or do I want it because it's almost like, trendy and,
Well, we talked about beignets, didn't we? So with regards to like advertising, so that like magazines to me, because Holly gets food magazines delivered every month, like Good Food and Ideal Home. She loves those kind of
yeah,
magazines. And I'll sometimes flick through like, this is just, it's an advert. There's not a lot of actual content really. It's just loads and loads of adverts that are
yeah,
kind of framed around, or, it's a bit editorial. It's like, no, it's just selling products and foods. And
yeah. You think about marketing and branding, it is mimetic desire. It's this product. This what the good one he says about the handbag. You get the handbag, the leather handbag. It's not because suddenly you absolutely love you're a leather handbag collector for the way it's made, the history of handbags. The development. You're not into that. You're into the fact that if I walk to if I go out with this on my shoulder, it's saying this, 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 and this about me. Right, but then there is a practical element sometimes to having that better branded car. It is a better car. It doesn't break down
yeah,
as much. It's a better coffee machine. The coffee beans taste better. It's not just because I've been duped, by George Clooney or something because he said they're good. So that's what I meant. It's a percentage. It's how much of this is like because I really genuinely want this. How much of it is it instinct, an instinctive desire, that's personal to me. The thing we talked about last time, Schopenhauer's thing about you can will what you want, but you cannot will your will. So everyone's got their own, probable desires and wills and things that they want to do it that pulls them in and that's they're they're naturally pulled towards. But then there is this other force in the world where we're social creatures and you were a bit frightened and we don't know what to do all the time and we want to fit in and we don't always want to be too much of a reject and too far out there.
well, where he kind of says, because there's a temptation to see it as a negative thing, isn't there? I think that's our instinct, to see a mimetic desire
Oh,
again.
yeah,
Once you've seen it, you go, oh, bloody hell, like, we're just being
yeah.
conned all the time, nothing's real. And whereas he's like, no, it's just neutral. It's not good or bad. It just is. It's the way we are as social creatures. I think there is an element to it with regards to how we've evolved and how cultures form and communities form and stuff. It's obviously played a role in that as well. So it's done as a service that way, but there's then negative potential offshoots to that. But he was clear, like, no, it's just neutral. Don't see it as this is a bad thing that you've almost got to eradicate.
Not at
And
all.
what we're trying to do with this, really, it's almost just shining a little light on it, isn't it? And going, do you know what? This is just something that affects us. Just have a bit of a check and challenge of yourself. Might this be influencing you down the
Yeah.
wrong path in one way or another?
Was desire one of the seven deadly sins or something, or some
I
of these?
don't think so. Lust is
Lust.
obviously in there, but this
Yeah,
is different to lust, isn't it? That you could
yeah.
probably say, I don't know, is lust more of a
But
is
there's
that more of
something
a
about the word
natural?
desire that has a connotation of like it's you know it's deeper than just a want, and using it as a positive. What I did like, and you definitely already sort of used a couple of examples this weekend. I was going to go out with my mates Saturday night, and I've just had a newborn, and it's pretty tough, in terms of being tired and things. Not, and I genuinely, want to be on form this week, Monday morning, Sunday, uh, just buzzing and enjoying, just walking the dog, being with the baby, ticking along. That's I've generally in my own life found places now where I feel that I've obviously still mimetically, want things for other people, but I have been consciously aware that for sort of 10 years or so, I've made moves in my life to find my own wants and what I want for me. It's not been everybody's cup of tea, but that's how I've done it. So that's what I wanted this week. So on Saturday night, I was supposed to be going out. I promised I'd go out and have this drink and go to this party, and DJ was on and so on, and a few friends were going. So I could have easily just said, "Oh, can't make it. I've got COVID or something." Come up with lied and come up with an excuse. And because what I realised that I don't want them to not like me. I want their friendship. I don't want them disappointed in me. I want them to think Danny Levin never lets us down. And so on. So I had this sort of thing, and then what helped was something that he suggested in the book. Bergin was to put him in a hierarchy. So what do you want more? And it was clear that inside myself, I wanted being healthy. So just literally a compromise flew into my head, which sounds so simple, which was go out and don't drink. But for me, that's a big deal. And I was like, how can I do that? And people had said that to me, dead obviously, like, just don't drink. You don't have to drink, just go out. And I was thinking, yeah, but that doesn't play to my personality. It doesn't play to my role. It doesn't play. They'll be disappointed at the end of the day because we all like going out and being silly. And it was just simple. It changed my behaviour because I hierarchied it, and I just went out. Actually had a great night, loved it, and actually realised that why do I go out drinking and boozing, and why have I done that? And I actually realised that a lot of it is because others do it, and as I've got older, it's not something that I want to basically keep doing, really, binge drinking till I can't drink another drop.
I realised that about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So any of my mates who end up listening to this would be like, that was me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I remember genuinely making a conscious decision of, it was one way and thinking, no, I'm just putting my line in this. I'm just going to stop drinking. I think I've drunk enough at this point.
Yeah.
And maybe my motivations to continue on just weren't the same as what they were when you're a bit younger, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think when you make a choice like that, you become aware of it. And I think then what you might do, what can help you then, is find a role model who doesn't drink and does well. So that becomes something I could almost feel when I got home the day after, I thought, I quite like that last night, and I quite like the change in my behaviour. I almost became a new desire to be out and not drunk. I could feel something changing. Now, I think that's really important with athletes. When you're trying to get behavioural change, what I've found is that if you can tap right into the deep inner desire, which for athletes, they're often not very nice liberals things. They might say, I want to be the world's number one player, I want to be this, but actually they want to be, why do they want that? They want power. They want prestige. They want the money, the hard cash. They want the fame. They actually want to be higher than their rival. They want to see the rival lose and suffer because the last time they played, they made them suffer. And these are the things that don't get often talked about because they're a bit almost shameful, and they're a little bit dark or a little bit, too true. And you have to say more of a nice thing, like, and I think when you really want to get someone motivated or change behaviors, or find some gumption in a performance and really go for it, I think sometimes it's using mimetic desire, where I want people to copy me. I want to be the leader. I want to be ahead in that rival game. Although in the long run, it can be damaging because, again, you're only mimetically reacting off your rivals. It still gives you some energy to come back and to fight yourself again, so type thing. No matter how childish that might feel, it's the thing that gets you doing it. Domination, being the one, like insatiable, desire to not lose in a way, and to put the other one down.
I can imagine in sport and for athletes, that's definitely, because there's so many role models, isn't there? In terms of, you can quite easily picture that because you've seen them doing it, you've heard them speak, you've seen how they were. So I think when you're looking for a role model, I think that's quite easy in sport. But you said something there that kind of switched the light bulb on for me when you're on about not drinking, and you're like, oh, maybe I need to find a role model. who doesn't drink, and then I can kind of, it gives you almost like an excuse to do that.
It helps.
But that was, so when I said, once you see this stuff, you can't unsee it. The other thing that jumped out to me with this, the more I ruminated on it, was you always kind of assume, or we like to think, yeah, but this doesn't apply to me. So you kind of think, oh, that's everyone else, that idiots, like they're so susceptible. And you kind of think, yeah, this is not me. I'm my own person, captain of my own shit. So I was trying to think of like, examples in my own life and people that were role models and stuff. And so I don't know if you've got any, but the two jumped out to me. One as a kid, and this is a proper random example, but I remember going to, when I first went to secondary school, so we're talking, 11 years of age, something like that. And I went to quite a small primary school, really, but then went to a massive secondary school in comparison. So just as you are at that age anyway, you're kind of like fish out of water, aren't you? You're just scrambling around trying to find out who you are and what you're doing in the world. So I remember that as like a really, and you get put in your form when you first start at secondary school. And you just try to latch on to anyone because I was the only person from my school. I think there's two of us from my school who went to the big school, as it were. So there's already quite a lot of cliques and stuff from people who've come from other schools, and so you're kind of in this fish out of water scenario. And I remember the lad that I first sat with, just in like the form room. And we just kind of got on straight away, not because of any other reason than we were just sat next to each other by chance, and kind of quite liking him and having a bit of a laugh with him and stuff. And him and there was a couple of other lads he knew were from like farming community. So, you can imagine at kind of 10, 11, 12, they're kicking around on tractors and stuff and like, working on farms. And so they kind of look quite, you're like, oh, you're like buzzing off them a bit. They just feel like a bit more independent. So I remember latching onto him for a couple of weeks, just playing football and stuff on a lunchtime and that. He used to walk, he had like these, I don't know if you'd call it like pigeon toed, where your toes kind of, you put your feet point inwards. He used to walk like that, but he's a good footballer and he used to absolutely ping a ball with the outside of his foot. He was left footed like me. And he'd have this really like distinct, like he'd like real like whip and he'd just ping a ball. And that obviously appealed. So he was someone that I was clearly at that time, I was kind of mimicking in a way.
Of course.
And the way that I remember it happening, this is where it just gets ridiculous. I remember being in a church, and I think we must have been at like a christening or like a wedding or something, like some kind of family type event. Because I remember like my mum and a few like uncles and aunties walking behind me up this aisle, like the side aisle of a church, and doing that walk that he did. So, like your feet pointing inwards. And I was just purely mimicking. Like he wasn't there; he was nowhere near the place. This is just me, like kind of extracurricular with family, doing this walk. I remember my mum saying to me, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "What are you walking like an idiot for?" Like, what do you mean? It's like when you're like, "No, I'm not. What are you on about?" Leave me alone, kind of thing. And then I must have been doing it like, for like a couple of weeks beyond. And she's like, "Why are you walking like that? What is your leg sore or something?" Like, no, why? I'm not doing anything. I'm just walking normally. And anyway, lo and behold, like it must have been a couple of weeks later, driving to school. My mum drives past the normal road that we turn off to go to school and thinking, where are we going here? And she's like, you'll find out. Pulls into this car park, ends up, it's like a doctor's surgery. And the kind of penny started dropping, and I'm thinking, oh no, what's going on here? Next minute, we're in this doctor's surgery, and it was like a what do they call like a child doctor, like
pediatrician or something.
Yeah, like in there, that kind of thing, maybe like a chiropractor kind of thing involved. And I'm sat in this office, and then I knew the penny. I was like, oh no, I know what's happening here. And the doctor's sat, and she's like, all right, John, can you just walk across the room to me? And my mum sat there, like, giving it daggers. And I knew what was the thing. So I gets up and just walks like, like the perfect walk. There's never been a better, more balanced walk in history. And the doctor's like, oh, like just turn around, go back the other way, just walking normal. And I can feel my mum starting to just boil. Where she's like, I cannot believe what he's done to me. Like, because the doctor's like, what? There's nothing wrong with him. What are you doing? Me and my mum's thinking I've got some kind of lower leg disease or something. And that was me just mimicking. I don't know why that came back to me, and we started thinking, and I was like, yeah, that was me just mimicking this. I don't know if it was a role model thing, or if it was just, it was
It just shows you, doesn't it? It is a powerful thing. You go on holiday, wouldn't you, and start picking up accents and coming back
Yeah,
talking like your new mates. And look at the Liam Gallagher effect, with the walking and the Stone Roses, and I've got mates that still go around like that now. It's amazing. And then it's a whole lifestyle thing because it's like one thing kicks into the other thing. You can't be, let's say you become a minimalist that some of my friends have done, and the gold standard is not to own anything. you
yeah,
know, and they're trying to outdo each other with. It's a force. It's a strong force, and I think that's what I was saying earlier. He does mention in the book one of the good films I used to like, The Prestige.
I like that, like the magicians.
The two magicians
Yeah,
who
good
drive
film.
each other on, and they can't stand each other. And it links to a point where, and I thought this was a good point, and I recognised it in myself. When you meet someone who's very similar to you, they become an instant rival. You almost don't like them for some reason because you can see in them like the game you're up to because you know that game very well. So you either have a decision, you either become colleagues and befriend them and then play like a low level, nice uh, hierarchy stroke Schadenfreude type, low level, like just top trumping each other where you can
Yeah,
little things. You don't mean it. It's not nasty. So you're kind of mates, but you're always subtly humble bragging each other or passive aggression with little things, and you're always trying to get up. Or you just go to full out war with them. Don't like them. They're fakes. I know what they're up to, and you're just like, whoa, there's this big resistance. So that was interesting in the Prestige, in that you need to use your rival. They were using each other's rivalry to get better tricks, but it ended up in complete disaster because they took it too far.
yeah,
And that's what I talk to players about sometimes. But contrary to popular belief, in the background, I'm properly revving up players, creating. They want what you've got. Like they're going to take everything. I'm trying to create that little bit, trying to get some fire going with a lot of people. Unless they're naturally that way, certain personality types they just do this. And they're very simple people. They're not simple as in not clever. I mean, they just see it simply. I'm taking you down. That's it. I'm the king of the jungle. If I bite you, I'm leaving my teeth in. This isn't personal. I'm just having it, and you're not. So they're always like that. But generally, a lot of people are just a little bit more like frightened to be brave enough to actually admit that they want to like take it.
one thing that Girard and the different authors talk about is kind of like systems of desire. So you've got like the person who you might desire, but there are also systems of desire. So sport to me seemed like it's almost like a system of, because it's constant one-upmanship, isn't it? And
Mm.
the example, or one of the examples they give is a French chef, Michelin star chef, who I
Yeah,
think had
yeah,
Michelin star for like 18 years,
yeah,
and then eventually just realised that he was constantly just like everything he was doing was to maintain this Michelin star set. And in the end, he just was, do you know what? I'm sacking this off. And he just bombed off the whole Michelin star because he felt like his creativity, everything around it,
yeah,
was being driven by this system of desire. And
yeah,
that was the other example I thought about. So when more recently that kind of academia, that it's a massive system of desire where,
yeah,
especially as researchers,
yeah,
everything's about the research excellence framework and metrics. What star journal is this, and how many papers have you published? And it's almost like a system where it's built in, where you've constantly got to want to be
yeah,
the person that's above you
yeah,
because they've got more publications or they've maybe published in a higher impact journal, and it's just built into the whole thing, and no one's really looking around going, hang on, why are we doing this? It's actually like hindering us
yeah. Because
instead
while
of pushing
that's
us.
that's what happens, isn't it? Everything gets a bit bland and unspoken. So while you're all doing that and being nice to each other, underneath there's this massive mimetic rivalry going on, and that, oh, by the way, I was asked to review that, and I was published there. So much
Yeah,
to the point that it's also, you don't mimetically brag about that. You just learn how to drop that in around the place, and it just gives you that sort of top trump move for that month, for that next 6 months block, where you're just that little. So I that's stressful to me when you're around that in your workplace. that's quite tough. I'd rather be out in the open. I'd rather
Yeah.
it being. That's why I like sport in a way. It's like people pretend they're friends and things like that out there, whereas I'd just rather get it cleaned out. At the end of the day, we're compatriots and we're colleagues, but I want to take you off your perch tomorrow morning. You know, when we play again, you're having it, and everything I'm doing now is to take you out, and I'm admitting it. You know, so there's something about that, and knowing, you know, is to me, and I think that was a bit of a secret to, you know, Laura and myself, you know, from where we were actually, you know, Laura getting to the top, because to beat some of those players that were ahead of her, we started to have to make it personal. And when we'd lose or something, I would literally be there like, "Are you happy with that? Is that what you really wanted? Did you want to fly all the way out to this country and lose?" Because everything seemed a little bit like you've just accepted it to me, and it, you know, it might create a bit of emotion and a bit of an argument, and you know, it was at times where I felt like maybe the mimetic thing was I will act the role of a nice loser, and actually that's not the truth. The truth is you're gutted, and there should be a bit of fire there. And you know, I was thinking, why don't players come out and overtly slag people off? I know boxing they do it, so it's you know, they do it and they say, "I'm going to knock your head off. I'm going to knock." But in normal most sports, you compliment your opponent and you say they're a mate. You don't say, "Oh, I don't like them and the coach is an idiot and you know I'm going to kill them." They don't say that in tennis and cricket and all these things, because I think if you did, I think you'd stir up some actual forceful desire in the other person, you know, more primal type of, this is what I really desire actually. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to win for me, but you don't call my mum that name. I am now playing for the family loyalty, and that's a different matter of fish, and they train better and they come at you. I think that was an interesting one I thought about.
Well, link into that, and for some reason, chefs they're quite similar to elite sports people, I think. But if you remember, this was the tweet that kind of inspired us.
Yeah,
I remember sending you this a couple of
yeah,
weeks ago, and
yeah,
it was a guy tweeting about. He doesn't name him, but it's obvious. I think in the thread he actually names him as he's talking about Gordon Ramsay.
yeah,
But it was someone kind of saying that just what a massive bellend he was. Basically,
mm,
that's kind of the gist of this first tweet.
yeah,
Gordon Ramsay was the way, and people who know him, you know, that was his shtick, wasn't it? Just hammering people, abusing them,
yeah,
shouting at them. It was just that was kind of really popular.
yeah,
And this guy actually used to be the guy responding to this tweet talks about how his popularity exploded between 2011 and 2013,
mm,
and he's saying he was actively working in a lot of kitchens at that time, and you could literally see the effects of Gordon Ramsay's role modeling kind of playing out at work, because he was saying almost overnight it was just trendy for head chefs to just start hammering people,
yeah,
like belittling their staff, abusing them, swearing at them, you know, because that was a big part of his stick, wasn't it? Just
yes,
like dropping F bombs left, right, and
yeah,
centre. And he's kind of saying almost overnight, all these aspiring chefs, so
yeah,
they're already kind of head chefs, but they're maybe just working in a normal restaurant kitchen or whatever. And because Gordon Ramsay's suddenly massive on TV and he's
yeah,
prominent, they're all then just suddenly mimicking. And it's obviously not because they want to be as good a chef as him. It's almost, for me, it was like, yeah, it's actually because they want what he's got. So they want the fame
yeah,
or the recognition or the
yeah,
money, perhaps, the
yeah,
celebrity that he's got. It's not about being a better chef, because no one's going to tell you that dropping 75 F bombs on a night is going to make your dishes taste better.
yeah.
It's that the mimicry bit behind it. And I don't know if you think is sports similar in that sense, where
Yeah, I
there's
think.
a lot of that goes on, especially coaches who mimic other coaches who've done well or got fame or made money or whatever.
Well, look. Let's look at, if we look at our area in terms of coaching theory and theories of coaching, for example, and how we've seen things come and go. You know, and it links into these sort of thick desires and these thin desires. And the thin things tend to be temporary fads that they're not grounded in history. So that the kind of passing and fleeting maneuvers that look like the latest thing, they look attractive, but then they gather momentum, and there's a tipping point and it becomes the thing to be. So, for example, 10,000 hours or practice. You get a book like Bounce, and it spreads through, gets to a certain thing, and everyone, or there's nothing wrong. Some of these books that take off, like The Secret, and at the moment in sport, there's a lot of stuff about resilience, and all the coaches are getting trained in how to be resilient. It's like, when you think about it, it's a passing, fleeting thing. So rather than go and read like the whole book on, like what Socratic resilience or Aristotle or researchers or psychologists that that have really talked about this all through the ages, they'd rather just read a quick PowerPoint on it and think that and go, oh, it's a fleeting, thin, passing desire. So that's what I mean. These chefs who have started to behave like idiots because Gordon Ramsay did, it's mimetic thinness. They just think, oh, if I just act like that, then I'm practically 2 steps off being Gordon, who in a weird way might have just not been as mimetic as you think, because that was his natural style type thing. He wasn't copying anybody before him. Maybe he was in another area, but he was the guy. Like, he was the original type of that. And then you get these thick desires, these thick ones, where someone around the time of Gordon Ramsay might have been, I like the way, that's Gordon, but Bill just be completely like, but that's not sustainable for me. And there's no way I'll do that. That's not why I'm a chef. And, I'm more like, I'm Jamie Oliver, or I'm Ainsley Harriott, or, I'm, James Martin. In other words, like, and I think you get that. I think you get a sense. We talked last time about authenticity. I think you get a sense of people who do what they do because they know what makes them tick, and they stay consistent through a long period of time. And I think players in sport, and when you teach or you've been a certain family member and you're quite consistent, you can always adapt and change slightly on the thin desires. You change your coffee styles, or you change this, but you don't do these quick, radical, quick whim. You don't just go and get loads of tattoos because people have started doing that, and you don't just go and get Botox because, well, everyone's having Botox. So you sort of see it through, and then actually you end up in a wiser position because you don't look like Simon Cowell. Last point, you resist all of that because you've got this ability to think through time in the moment. Whereas a lot of people, they say, go into the moment, and you're just swept up in the latest fad because everything's disconnected. It's like disconnected series of pleasures rather than so then what you get if you do that too much, you get cold deep. If you say, well, before we do that, and let's consider this. So our podcast here is considered way too deep. You're going way too deep thinking of all this critical thinking. Just do what, just do it. And I think that's the difference. I think we've stopped thinking deeply about things, and we've gone a little bit more, we haven't got time for that, debate and seeing various points of view. It needs to be quicker than that. It needs to be thin and quick, and the latest move, the latest this, there. So a Gordon Ramsay comes along, and you really easy fodder for simple, new, quick ideas. And like, this book is a classic example, right? You could retake this wanting book, like any of these airport books, right, or popular science books, and it can literally become someone's Bible.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is to say, that doesn't mean it's a bad book. It's like, read the book, but be critical about it, and don't use it as your Bible for everything all of a sudden. Like, don't be so easily swept up by it, but equally don't reject it just because of that. Because there's some damn useful stuff in it, and you can utilize it. So Gordon Ramsay's not completely wrong when he gets a bit angry and tells people off. Sometimes people need a bit of that, and a bit of swearing, can rev people up. But if it's not really your style, don't meme it to the absolute max. Own it yourself. Own what you're doing. Know yourself. Own it, and take little ideas from mimetic ideas, but don't get overwashed with it all.
I think an interesting one that comes, we were talking about, not on the podcast, but when we were just chatting about the King Rocker film.
Yes, yeah.
And they're kind of like subculture comedian, subculture kind of musician, wasn't it? They never really made it big, but they were kind of like cult famous. So they had a cult following, but they never made the mega bucks and got the fame and stuff.
Yeah.
And I always think that chefs are a little bit like that, but comedians are just, it's massive. So that mimetic desire in terms of envy, where they kind of they think they want what that person who's on top at that moment has got, but then once they get there, it's the last thing they wanted. They didn't actually want it. They just desired what they desired in a way, didn't they? And when they find it, it's almost like, God, this is a nightmare. And you're seeing it a little bit with Rogan at the minute.
Yeah.
So he's obviously, people are trying to cancel. He's probably the top of the tree with regards to comedians who've got that global reach, globally famous with a global audience. And you can imagine almost so there's people who've come up with him all the way through who are really like, they've got his back, they're really defending him, and they try to kind of help him out. And then there's the other side of that, the people who are hammering him. And it's not, take the politics out of it, just that kind of envy of, they almost hate him because he made it as big as he did. But that's what they've been trying to do at the same time alongside him. It's just that he made it for whatever reason. And I think chefs are quite similar, and then sports people as well. It's all like a massive game of envy.
We always go back to what they always say, that Socratic thing, wasn't he? He was the king philosopher, and Socrates, and his big line was know thyself. So I think if you start from there and you're right, I kind of know myself. So you as best as you can, we're doing a podcast here, aren't we? Why are we doing a podcast? Because it's.
I wrote that down to ask you why we're doing this.
Yeah,
like,
it's popular. We've been influenced by everybody else who does podcasts. It's a way of, but it's a way of getting things out. It's keeping us up on pace. So there's lots of mimetic reasons we're doing it, but equally we're not, banging. It's a bit of fun, isn't it? If 20 people listen, 200, we're not trying to be. We don't really desire to be number one in the. It'd be like, oh, that'd be interesting and that'd be nice, and you never know, it'd be a bit of this, bit of that. But
we're taking Rogan out here. Rogan's getting taken down. There's a new podcast in town.
What is it really in itself? It's a release for ourselves. It's a place where we can gather ideas, and that was the same when I did my research, my PhD. It's like, it wasn't to be the doctor mainly. That was, of course, that's a nice little bit to say. It was in itself. It was an amazing thing for me to experience and go through. Right. So whereas as a younger person, I'd have definitely done it more mimetically in terms of that's what the university lecturers have. That's what the students would admire in me if I had that. When it's become more of a playground for me, because I actually desire. I don't want to be someone. Oh, I'm never doing a PhD because that's just for people who copy each other. I'm not denying myself. I'm never doing a podcast because we can't be number one at it, and so everyone's doing a podcast now. So I'm going to be the person who doesn't do one. It's like, no, that's a ridiculous. Just if you want to do it, if you know yourself and you know why you're doing it, admit it and just do it. And I think that's the thing. Otherwise, what you get this hollowness. You don't know where you are. You desire nothing because you think desires aren't great because I'm just copying people. I nothing really excites me anymore. It's too mimetic. Everyone wants that, so I'm not having that. And you're scrambling around trying to be anti-mimetic, which is too much of that. Where on the other side, you don't want to be someone who's just going after things, fulfilling your life with stuff that you think you want, but then all along you didn't want it, and you change as well. So you could be up to 29, 28, whatever, and you think you want to be world champion, you think you want the car and all of that. So at that time, you're quite congruent that that's what you do want. But then after that, you might change and you go, well, I've had a taste of that. What I really want now is fresh air. Like, I want more fresh air. Like, I really genuinely do. I never thought I'd say that. But, and then you're not too stubborn or trapped in your other previous life to just go, I want different things now for myself. And you still get, you're still going to get buy that new golf club because Tiger Woods plays with it, and you think, oh, that's quite nice. You're still going to be happy when you get a Hugo Boss jumper at Christmas, rather than an Aldi one, because it's like, oh well, yeah, it's quite nice, it makes me feel good. You're not like this super anti-mimetic, amazing, speed. So I think it's knowing yourself, laughing at yourself a bit, accepting it, but tempering it, and so that you don't end up in a hollow chase, like the old race hound, isn't it? Race hound that goes round the track chasing the rabbit and then realizes it's a fake rabbit at the end. He was chasing something, that kind of metaphor thing. You've gone all your life on this thing that in the end you didn't even want it anyway. It was fake all along. So that's what I took from it, the book mainly. I really enjoyed the book. I definitely recommend it. And already this week, I've been using it to fire some of my clients up, some of my players who have been feeling a little bit in no man's land with COVID and things. And, they've not had the coaches traveling with them. They've not been getting fired up, and I've just grounded them back into, come on, what is it you really desire here? And I'm not really, and don't be too shameful about those desires. If you're jealous of that other player and you want to get them back, that's cool. We'll just work with that for the moment. It doesn't have to be constant jealousy forever. Let's just get them back, and that inspires them to train. But that's in a hierarchy game, obviously. You see, that's in sport where the aim of it is to be, in terms of competition, is to be the winner and not the loser.
I think that ethos, though, that you said there, that's a good place. Certainly where I would recommend people try and be. It's that balance, isn't it? So we're not now saying you're just like a malleable blob who's just been influenced by all this stuff all the time. You don't know what you want to do. You just do what everyone else thinks you should do.
Yeah,
We're not saying that at all by having it. We're just saying, look, it's nice to be aware of it and maybe just think, just that little bit. Actually, yeah, am I maybe doing some elements of my life? I've gone too far down that path, and it wasn't really what I wanted to do. It was that kind of mimetic desire had just got too much of a grip on me. Likewise, we're not saying don't think about anything and just crack on and do whatever. Just acting on pure instinct all the time. It's just that balance in between. Have a think. Just so when we're talking about thinking critically, it's just that. Read a book, weigh it up a little bit. How does it apply to you? Maybe remove some things, add some others, on you go again. That's that nice balance, I think.
And it's nice to sometimes see the young people falling for it. Not, a little too much, you don't want to be too wise when you're too young, do you? You want to be making mistakes. So you see kids at the gym wearing all the Gymshark type stuff, and they never would have been in the gym getting sculpted bodies years ago, unless they were Arnold Schwarzenegger, fans, and they were into that. They go to a bodybuilding place. But now, mimetically, body and your hair and your face, and you do see that with some of the youth. They all look very similar nowadays, don't they? They've got this certain look with the makeup, especially. I don't know whether that you saw it in like you saw all the makeup come in and the models and the Instagram. It's like there's this morphing into one. So, but it's like, yeah, but that's the time they've been thrown into. Like, let them make them mistakes. Accept them. Don't judge them for it. Don't laugh at them. Empathize with them. Once you understand mimetic desire, you're not just going to, because it's a powerful force, you're not just going to go, mindless idiot. You're going to actually empathize with them and go, gosh, I reckon if I were 21 and I was going out and I was in the gym, we did it, didn't we? Even, back in the day, we would have been wearing football tops, certain fashions, certain haircuts. It's always been the case. And so I think it's quite good to understand it so that you can use it. You can empathize with people, why they do what they do. You've seen it. You saw it with the smoking. The other philosopher in this, the scientist, was René in America.
Yeah.
Who got women to smoke using mimetic desire patterns by, and a bit of Freudian stuff, get them to want these things and they'll buy them. So there's lots of powerful human forces at work. Why people do what they do. And I think if you understand it as a teacher, as a coach, you don't just immediately jump to you fool, you idiot, you mindless, you can't even think for yourself. You understand it, and then you can empathize and work from there a bit. And maybe as a coach or a friend, or you can walk them back into their own actual proper choices that they like, which is something they might chip away at and not feel as hollow, when it kind of, because it can't work for everybody, can it? That if everyone's got everything, you can't all be top of the tree. You can't.
I definitely think it's a good nut for young people. So I'm thinking of my niece, especially, she's 16, 17.
Yeah.
For me, it's not like you would then go, have a read of this book. And it's
No.
like this, it's hardcore social theory. And for
Mm.
that, but I do think for that age group there, it's like on steroids, so things like social media, so
Yeah.
your Instagrammers and all that stuff. And advertising the advertising back in the 50s and 60s when we're talking about, people like Bernays,
Yeah.
that it was pretty savage, really, the way that they were conning human beings, essentially, getting them to act and behave in certain ways. But it's like that on steroids now.
Yeah.
So that, when you look at how pervasive advertising is on all these different platforms, it's not just TV, is it? It's everywhere. And maybe just a nudge for me, it's like, just, are you aware that actually the reason you want that is not because of this? It's like, have you thought about all these other subconscious influences that are just kind of pecking away at you in the back of your head, going, oh, you want this, you want this.
Influences. I mean, even the word influence is absolutely everywhere, isn't it? This mimetic stuff. So yeah, it's like everything, isn't it? If you tool yourself up, read around some subjects, understand what's going on underneath, at least there's an awareness then about when you're getting a little bit carried away. But don't get paranoid and don't make yourself miserable and don't enjoy some of the facts that it's nice to copy people sometimes, and it's lovely to have heroes and think that you're Elvis or something, or you think that you're Liam Gallagher for 10 minutes. It's what's wrong with that? It's just obviously, it's fun, it's nice, it makes you dream, it gives you energy. So there's all these good things to it, but obviously, like most things in life, it's an ambiguous force, isn't it?
So balance. That's the conclusion. Have a listen to this. Think about it. Go and read the book. We definitely both recommend the book. It's a
Yeah,
good read. But
yeah,
like we say, don't think that's your new Bible, and you now got to become this really hypercritical, skeptical person of everything. But I thought we'd just end on maybe 4 questions that I posed just from reading, just for people to mull over. Again, not in any great depth, but just have a think about who is influencing what you want, and just kind of try and pick a couple of people that you go, actually, yeah, that they've influenced me, and that person's influencing me. Who most embodies the lifestyle that you want, and then maybe just start to unpick why that is, perhaps. Again, you're not going down a massive rabbit hole. It's just to unpick a couple of the threads that maybe you could unearth something for you.
Yeah.
And then think back. So I gave the example from childhood. Apart from family, who are the biggest influences on you in childhood? And you can maybe trace through some of those threads to you today. And then maybe split up those internal and external models. So who are your internal models and who are the external models of desire for you at this point? So internal are people that you're in contact with and you actually interact with. External, more that kind of celebrity culture, maybe people from history, etc., that might be models of desire for you. So have a think about those as maybe little reflective prompts.